We welcome you tonight. My name is Lisa Herrick. For those of you who are new, I started 31st Street shortly after Trump was elected, February 2017, in my living room with 30 people. And we just had to increase our MailChimp account because we are sending our newsletter to more than 1,500 people every week. So it's a bit of a milestone. We're still growing, really, we're growing every day. New people are joining us, so it's very exciting. Tonight, we are going to be hearing from Sarah Kieski. She is a state Senate candidate from Wisconsin, and from Travis Harold, who is a state House candidate from Michigan. And we'll hear from Jim Shelton about some background information. We'll have time for some questions and answer and a few other announcements. We do want to thank our co-hosts. Do we have a co-host slide? And there are our co-hosts. Without co-hosts, we would not be able to do these fundraisers. We thank every one of you for inviting your friends, family, colleagues, college roommates. We have a great crowd already at 117. So thank you very, very much for offering to co-host. We really appreciate that. We will be having additional fundraisers before the election, and so there will be more opportunities to co-host. So I just want to say a couple of words before we jump in. That's what I typically do. We usually have a little bit of an intro. And today I want to just acknowledge the work of the grassroots groups, like all of you, like all of us, over the last 8 years. Robert Hubble, who writes a wonderful newsletter, spoke in his newsletter earlier this week of the significance of the grassroots groups over the last 8 years. And when I read what he wrote, I just was very moved by it. So I just am going to share that with you. And this, I'm just sort of picking out of what he wrote. The grassroots volunteers were disruptors, freedom fighters, and when the history of this period is written by scholars interested in the truth, they will say that it was the grassroots volunteer who stood in the breach and saved democracy, literally saved democracy, by carrying it on their backs during its hour of need. During the challenging 8 years between 2016, when 31st Street started, and 2024, grassroots volunteers kept democracy alive during a period of exile. We can see the promised land, but we are not there yet. Make no mistake, we have arrived safely at this moment because of you. We can see the next victory and the path forward because you abided, because you did not waver, because you were a faithful servant of democracy. And we thank you for all you have done for America. And we at 31st Street want to personally thank you for all you are doing for America. Sometimes it's very hard to step forward to a challenge, to something scary, to something depressing. A lot of people just hid from it or distracted themselves from it or got busy instead. But the grassroots groups of this country, including all of you, stepped forward. And we are really grateful that you have been with us and that you're with us still. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Great, Lisa. Thanks for that great inspiration and foundation. And thanks for all the folks that have been working with us and new people that are joining us now. So I am the sort of political analyst, and having now shown my face, I'm going to now shift to my slides because that's kind of the only way I can communicate very well. So we're talking about state legislatures tonight. And it's a good example of some of our operating principles. A few of you are not that familiar with us, but a couple of these are definitely, I think, going to come through tonight. We look for high leverage opportunities, and that often means zigging where other people are zagging, things that are kind of overlooked, but are really good investments for us and for you. So, many of you may be totally sold on this, but I'm going to go through it anyway. They're probably something you haven't heard anyway. And there are a lot of good reasons why supporting state legislatures and those races are so important, and I'm going to try to outline a lot of it. First of all, the obvious things, there are so many direct impact things on citizens, and right now our hearts go out to women in Arkansas and Texas and so forth who are losing their rights to women's health and women's rights. But also there's regional impacts from one state to another. But where the rubber really hits the road in the way is in elections. So I'm now, in that case, I'm talking about up ballot elections, especially related to gerrymandering, the House of Representatives, but also a lot of voting restrictions that legislatures and governors are instituting. But there are many other ways that are more subtle and vary from state to state about what state legislatures do. You'll see a little bit tonight, maybe a bit about our future, because the candidates that run for state legislatures oftentimes are the ones that are our bench. And Barack Obama was a state senator in 2004, 2005, and 4 years later, he was president of the United States. So that's just one example. But also, we really believe that it's so important to have these candidates run vigorous campaigns. They're the workhorses. They're the ones knocking on all the doors, and they turn out Democratic votes up ballot that will help us win across the board for our trifecta, federal trifecta that we want. Right, so just here's a little bit of information about those voting restrictions and expansions, if you will. So this comes from the Brennan Center, who look at this kind of information over time. And I don't want to belabor this too much, but you'll notice that these states with Republican legislatures have been a lot more restrictive than our great example of Michigan, which has been very expansive. And of course, for folks who live in Virginia, you know full well that voting has been expanded a lot. Early voting, same-day voting, mail-in voting. So it really makes a difference. Here's something maybe many people are not aware of. We had a great loss between 2010 and 2016, where we lost over 1,000, nearly 1,000 legislature seats. So that's a lot of legislature seats over 50 states. And it's been a real challenge to try to win a good deal of that back, or some of that back, which is what we're trying to do even now. But there are some good things that have happened, and this is because of people intervening in legislature races, including our good colleagues at the States Project. So in Michigan, where both chambers flipped in 2022, the last vote, and these are both they're both wins by one legislative vote. Both of those were about 400 votes each. Think about that. The major change in Michigan by about 800 votes. Pennsylvania, even fewer votes. So the Pennsylvania House flipped in 2022. Deciding seat was actually only 61 votes. And then lastly, in Minnesota, where there was a flip in the Senate that gave rise to a trifecta, that gave rise to the Minnesota miracle that Tim Walz has been so much a part of. That trifecta at the last seat was only 189 votes. So what's more, is that our money goes so much farther. So, we think it's great that Kamala Harris has raised well over $500 million in whatever, 2-3 weeks. And that Sherrod Brown has $100 million and so forth. These races, especially in the states we're talking about tonight, Wisconsin and Michigan, the $20,000 that we're going to raise is actually enough to move the needle and make a big difference in these races. And we may hear some of that from Sarah and Travis. So this is a little bit of the sort of game plan. Last month, we did Pennsylvania and North Carolina with these objectives. This month in Michigan, we want to increase the majority, or certainly protect it, but we really want to increase it because when you have only a 1-seat majority, it's harder to get good things passed. And they got a lot of good things passed, but we'd like to make it a bit easier and make things somewhat better and set up for a trifecta in 2 years. In Wisconsin, however, because of the fair maps that you and we helped with that Supreme Court race in April of last year, there are great fair maps across the entire state, a lot of new candidates running, and there's a definite clear path to flipping that chamber to the blue side. The Senate, however, is only half of them are running, so there's no clear path to winning at this time, but we want to win enough so that we can win in 2026, and that's where Sarah Kieski comes in. The next month, we'll be doing Arizona, where we have the opportunity to flip both chambers, which are both have Republican majorities of only 1 vote. And then, of course, all of this, you'll notice these are all swing states, so they all will help up ballot for all the things we want to do from Harris on down. Okay, so here are candidates. And, you can see they're, nice looking people, smiling and so forth. I will tell you, we go through a really rigorous process to find these people. They're in very competitive seats. They're in seats where they need the money. And they're all very energetic and working hard for it. And so in Wisconsin, we like to do challengers. We have all challengers. 6 are in the House and Sarah's in the Senate. In Michigan, we decided to do 3 incumbents that were, challenged. So we're doing 4 challengers and 3 incumbents. And that's because, we need to preserve what we got, and we need these incumbents. They have experience. To get good legislation, you need experienced legislators. And we talked to every one of these candidates and almost all of their campaign managers, just in terms of our due diligence. So I feel really good about these folks. And anyway, here's Sarah and here's Travis going to be talking to us in just a bit. All right. So we also, just to kind of give you the idea of this idea of up ballot or reverse coattails, how it really kind of comes into focus. In Michigan, we have the example of Travis Harold in one district, but he's also within a U.S. congressional district, which is very competitive. And also one of the incumbents, Nate Shannon, is within that same district. And all of them are, all of this goes to the benefit of Presidents potentially elect Harris, Alyssa Slotkin for the U.S. Senate, and 2 very important Supreme Court races in Michigan. So again, we think this is very strategic and very, very helpful. Travis told us on his interview that he was actively working with Carl Malinga in terms of the ground game. So that's always good to hear. So where are we in terms of what we're trying to do? Our goal is $280,000. And actually, as it happens, partly because we have some solid donors that help to get us off the mark, if you will. As of earlier today, we'd raised $177,000. So we have only a little more than $100,000 to go. I'm hoping we can go through that tonight. We will keep going until we get to that. And again, it will get on average $20,000 to each one of these candidates, and it will really, really help them. So with that, I believe it's now time for me to turn the mic over to Sarah Kieski. Over to you, Sarah.
So thank you so much, both Lisa and Jim, for those early remarks. Lisa, I think it's amazing that you've been doing this for so long. So bravo to you. And I think the idea of persistence and precision, which I saw is kind of your motto, if you will. I think it's just such a brilliant plan. So I applaud you all for being here and being those grassroots volunteers. That's been one of the things that I have been touched by so much, is to see all the people doing all the things. I have this unique perspective behind the curtain, if you will, and I get to see everybody and what they're doing. And I have been so moved by all that is going on behalf of my candidacy, and of course, all the others. So thank you for being part of that. So I'll share a bit about me. Actually, I'm inviting you into my therapy room. I'm actually a mental health therapist. So this is where I do individual, family, couples counseling. And I've been a therapist for 25 years. And so I am not a politician. I am learning the ropes as we go. And so if I stumble over my words and, make gaffes, that is just kind of who I am. So just roll with it. So I, like I said, I've been a mental health therapist, and I have a blended family of 6 kids. And so this is close to my heart, this election in particular, because I'm really concerned about our future and what we're doing to our country, to our planet, for the kids that I am raising and bringing into this world. So a little bit about me. I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm here in Wisconsin. And just learned service and work ethic. We did mission trips, we did picking of rocks and baling of hay and all the things that a country kid does. And so through that, I just learned how to be somebody that worked hard and cared about their neighbor. And oh, cute. Somebody else's licensed professional counselors. So that then led into me being a licensed professional counselor, which is what I do now, because that was the best way I could figure out to serve in the way that felt most authentic to me, to be able to help people that were struggling with their emotional challenges. And like I said, I've been doing that for 25 years. It's been really rewarding work. And really, I kind of went about my life really happily going along, doing the things that I love with counseling, but also I always have had a fair share of my life in volunteerism, just because I think service is really good for the soul. So that kind of is what brought me here, if you will. As many of you, when number 25, 45 was elected, it was a really scary, painful, terrifying, distressing time for me. And again, as I looked at the future, so I was quite sad and depressed and anxious. And then COVID hit. And as a therapist, I sit across from people and I hear about the challenges that they're facing and the despair that they're feeling. And for me, it became heavier and heavier those years, and these years, I should say, because I'm not alone. And trying to be able to help other people while also carrying my own distress became really heavy. And I got kind of more and more depressed, really. I just got sad, and I'm just not really a depressed person. So I had to figure out, like, what am I going to do, other than just sort of spin in my own head. And that's when in 2021, I came across a quote, and it is from Joan Baez, and it is, "Action is the antidote to despair." And for me, that was a really compelling quote to find, because it really helped me then figure out, okay, this feeling that I have, what I need to do is really channel it forward in some sort of action that feels meaningful. So I decided, well, I'm going to start a nonprofit then. Talked to the local mayor. I live in a small town of about 3,000 people. And I said, what do you think about this idea? It was after COVID, where we get together and we try to work together, irregardless of political party, but we all care about Lodi. So what about if we work together to uplift Lodi, do things for Lodi, my town, that are meaningful? And so I called it Lift Lodi. And she was like, sure, if you want to do it, that's fine. So again, it was just me using my frenetic angst and energy and going, okay, so started this nonprofit, and I coordinated with all kinds of community organizations to figure out, well, what could we do? Because it was all had to be outside. So we connected with, the police, we connected with the post office, the library, the city council, everything. And so we had jobs to do, like planting trees at the primary school, taking out garbage from the Spring Creek, planting flowers at the post office, washing the windows at the library, that kind of stuff. And the first year, I just put out a call and I said, I have lots of jobs. Can I please have volunteers that also care about the community, want to do something good, want to give back? And again, I think it was the whole point was to lift our surroundings, but also lift our hearts. The first year, I had 200 people that volunteered. And that's a big deal in my little town. So I did it again. Second year, 250 people volunteered. And so what it told me is that people care. People are trying to figure out how best to give in their own ways. So that was really exciting. And then when you do that, it turns out you get on people's radars. And I got asked to run for assembly. So not Senate yet. I was asked to run for assembly. That was last fall. And at the time, we did not have the new maps. I'll talk about the new maps in a second, but we had very gerrymandered maps. We had a Republican incumbent in the assembly district I live in. It was an 18-point Republican swinging district, no chance of winning, but they were looking for somebody that would run because they needed somebody to help get out the vote, someone to help Tammy Baldwin win in our state, someone to help at the time Kamala Harris and Biden. And again, for me, like my civic obligation, my sense of like wanting to do everything I can to make sure that Trump is not elected again, said, I had to talk with my family. And then I said, yeah, sign me up. I'll do that. I will run and I will try to get as many people out to the polls as I can. Well, then in March, we had new maps signed into law. And my district that I was in went from 18 points Republican to 16 points Democratic, which was pretty amazing. That's what can happen if you have fair maps, because this area that I was in is much more blue than it was showing. The problem with that was that I wasn't really looking for another job. I wasn't necessarily wanting to be a politician. And so I actually was opting to opt out of politics because other people, now that they knew that they could win, they were open to running. Then there were conversations that were had at the legislative level, at the community or county level, at the state level, looking for who did they want to ask to run for Senate. And I was privileged to be asked to run for state Senate. And so as a brand new person to politics, I've all of a sudden became the state Senate Democratic candidate. And I'm, like I said, I'm trying to figure it out as I go, but I do know like the things that I really care about. I do know where my values are. I do know how to fight hard. And so in some ways it's like such a strange place to be. And yet some ways I feel like it's just the exact right place for me to be. As I said, I'm a mental health therapist, so my job has been for years to pull people out of the stream, to keep them from drowning, if you will. And now I see my role as hopefully a legislator, to be someone that gets to go upstream and prevent people from falling in. And so that's how I see my role as helping, so that actually we have less need for mental health services versus just more mental health providers, which I think is oftentimes what people think is the answer, which I simply don't think we can ever probably get enough if our world continues in the way that it is, where we're struggling with more and more distress and difficulties and economic challenges. What else can I tell you? I think I'll tell you a couple of things that I think are really important. I think making sure that we're socially free is really important. Making sure that we have choices over our body, making sure that we have choices over the books that our children are able to read, making sure that we have choices about who we marry and who we love. I think we need to have better financial security. Right now, the state of Wisconsin still has a $7.25 minimum wage, which is appalling, and just so draconian, really. So we need to make changes. We need to also invest in our rural economies and make sure that those are uplifted, because rural areas deserve to have good things too. And they're oftentimes neglected. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I'm from rural. I live rural now, and I want to support rural. And finally, physical safety is really important. Gun control, gun safety regulations are really important to me. I can't tell you how many clients, young clients I've had that I've had to talk to about their anxiety about being at school, having to do the different drills that they have to do for safety. I just think that is causing, if you will, a trauma at a level that I'm not sure that we fully understand, that we're teaching them that where they are most of the time, 5 days a week, is an unsafe place, is not good. Physical safety, I think, again, with our environment, making sure that we have clean water, making sure we have PFAS contamination in our state. Many people are having to do bottled water. So we need to make sure that we address that too. So those are some of the things that are really important to me outside of course, mental health, making sure that we have affordable, accessible mental health. But as I said before, I don't think our answer is going to be having more providers necessarily. We do need those, but we really need to think about, well, what is contributing to so much distress? What is contributing? And I think much of that is related to families that don't have access to the care that they need for medical issues. They don't have, labor rights to be able to, fight for a better wage. So they're having to work split shifts if they need childcare and they can't afford it. I mean, that's difficult for families. And so really just thinking about, well, how do we help our families and our communities do better so that we can all feel emotionally better in a way that serves everyone. So that, I guess that's where I'll stop today. And you guys can ask me questions when it's question time.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate your being here. And if you'll just hang in there for a little while, we will do questions in a little bit. But now we would like to hear from Travis Harold, who is from Michigan. Travis?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, look, first off, big thank you to 31st Street, and all the support that you folks do. I lived in the DMV area. I lived in Arlington. And I also lived in Alexandria. So for my DMV folks on the call, big shout out. Also, I saw a Go Blue in the chat. Absolutely Go Blue. Football season is upon us. Scary times for us. But anyway, so look, my name is Travis Harold, and I'm running for state representative in Rochester Hills, and Oakland Township. And that's a suburb north of Detroit here in Michigan. And first, I just like to start with the stakes. And look, the stakes are high. So my seat is the most competitive seat in the whole state-led competitive seat in the whole state of Michigan. I'm running against a Republican incumbent who won his seat by 1.8%. Right. But then also, as Jim pointed out, and thank you, Jim, our congressional seat that was the third narrowest margin of victory by a Republican in the country, and they won by 1,600 votes. And that was specifically that congressional member, that Republican congressional member, specifically got 1,000 votes out of my state representative district. Right, he won by 1,600 votes. 1,000 of those votes was from my state representative district. Right, those are the same votes that we're going for. And it's not to mention that Michigan is obviously one of the premier battleground states for the presidency. And that's before we even get to the talk about the Democratic majority in the state house and the Democratic trifecta in Michigan. So this seat matters. It's it has all the attention grabbers that you need. And, you know, our country's on the line, our state is on the line. And so thank you so much for the support and effort that you folks have done here in Michigan, because we need it. And so just a little bit about me. So I was raised by a single mother who worked at local public schools to provide for our family. And after my mom worked at local public schools, she then became a union organizer, where she would unionize school workers. And I remember at the age of 9, I used to go door knocking with my mother. And, you know, I didn't know, or, you know, I didn't quite understand the adult conversations and the policy issues. You know, I was only 9 years old. But what I did remember was when we would go knocking doors, there were people who were looking for accountability. There were people who depended on the government for their livelihood. That government decisions mattered for their kitchen table, for their bottom line, and they were looking for help. And so when the government doesn't show up, I've seen people who experience the brunt of that. And I promise you this, just to go a little deeper in the onion, I remember I used to walk with my mother and knock doors with my mother. And after we would finish knocking doors, you know, sometimes she would cry. She would get very emotional. And I would go, you know, a 9-year-old, hey, Mom, what did I do? You know, I'm sorry. I won't complain about walking. But my mom would simply say, hey, Travis, we need to do better. And that stuck with me then, and that sticks with me now. We need to do better. We can do better. And this, what we're going through right now, should not ever be our status quo. We have to hold people accountable, and that includes people in our government. So at the age of 9, I used to walk with my mother on union doors and convince folks to get unionized. But then I went to Eastern Michigan University, which is a state school here in Michigan, where I played football. It was a Division I school. You know, I had a great time there. And then after that, I went to University of Michigan, where I got my master's in public policy. And during my Michigan studies, I had the chance to work for Congressman John Dingell, who was a very famous congressman here in Michigan, and also once upon a time the dean of the House of Representatives in DC. And then I also worked for our iconic Michigan U.S. Senator, Debbie Stabenow. And so I really learned how to be a public servant from those two individuals. And so after my time at Michigan, I then went to join the U.S. State Department as a Foreign Service officer, where I served in countries abroad. I served in Jamaica, I served in Kosovo, served in Thailand, really all about. And actually in March 2022, I was on the U.S. Coronavirus Task Force, repatriating Americans back to the homeland and making sure that they get back safely. And so after my time in the Foreign Service, it's a great career. I learned so much there. I then joined the United States military as a military intelligence officer because my commitment to service is just really, really strong. I'm really passionate about that. And so then I served, and I'm still in the Army Reserves now as a military intelligence officer, but you know, where we train soldiers and prepare for a day that we hope never come. And so after that, after wrapping up my government service, military and foreign service alike, I decided to return back to Michigan. And I knew I wanted to move back in Metro Detroit area because I got a little spoiled, living in Bangkok, living in DC, Mexico City, you get a little spoiled, and the food options are more abundant, I must say. So moving back to Michigan, I decided to move into Metro Detroit, which is a very special city and area in our state. And so then, once I got back, I started volunteering in the American Legion, helping volunteers transition from helping veterans transition from military life back to civilian life. And during my time in the community, I just started to notice that our current representative, he voted against gun safety, and but we have had a national shooting in our community. We've also had Oxford High School, right? But yet again, our current state representative has voted against gun safety. It doesn't make sense to me. Also, reproductive health. Our current state representative has voted against reproductive health, even though there was a survey done where nearly 60% of our community is in favor of the right to choose. That also didn't make sense to me. And then in terms of education, we have some of the most terrific schools in the state. And, again, the current incumbent voted against, resources for education. Again, voting out of touch with our community values. And so one thing I learned in the military is that public service is about everything but you. It's about your due diligence and commitment to the people and the common good. And so whether you agree with something or not, your job is to represent the people. And if you can't do that, then you have to go. And so that's why I'm running for state representative. And, our slate here in Michigan, we have a wonderful slate. The decisions here matter. I'll tell you this, at the state legislature level, right? Reproductive health, that's at the state level. That matters. Right? People's right to choose. These are very personal, family, economic decisions. There should not be any mandates from the government dictating what someone can and can't do, right? That's a state decision that matters. Gun safety. We know that at the federal level, people have been tied. There hasn't been any movement on gun safety. Like I said, we experienced a national shooting in our community and in our district. That same night, we had 3 shootings in the Metro Detroit area. That same night of that shooting. Not to mention that we had an Oxford High School shooting. Not to mention that we also had a shooting at Michigan State University. And that's just our state alone. America, we have a problem. I am a veteran. I am a legal firearm carrier. I believe in the Second Amendment right. But I'll tell you this, in our national shooting in our community, a 4-year-old got shot. An 8-year-old got shot in the face. A 78-year-old got shot at a water park. America, we have a problem and we must address it. And, so, right, these are state issues, not to mention, and also education, a state issue. And so these decisions impact the daily lives of people every day. And it's super important to show people that Democrats, that we're fighting to protect democracy. We're fighting to protect freedoms, right? I feel like on the opposite side of the aisle, they're very anti-vax, ban books, anti-books, anti-reproductive health. But what are you for? Right? And so we're fighting for our freedoms. Make no mistake about it, that's on the line. And I also like to point this out, and I have 2 more points and then I'll turn it back over. But my next point here is that state legislators and candidates like Sarah, right? We're on the ground. So we see things first. We hear things first. We hear the voices at the ground level. And let me tell you a good example of this. So we all know what happened on January 6th, right? There was essentially a coup, right, at our Capitol building. And it hurts me as a veteran to say that, because I've taken bullets for this country. I've been shot at. I haven't been shot. Please, not, but right, I've been shot at. And right, and to see what happened in our Capitol building was just it was tragic. But let me tell you this, actually, a few months prior, at the state ledge level here in Michigan, there was a violent protest, very similar, and a very comprehensive plan to kidnap our governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. We saw it first. We saw it first on the ground here at the state ledge level. And so we know that type of rhetoric is very dangerous. That happened at the state level first. And then, right, we saw it in January 6th, which is a very sad day, I believe, for our country. I believe that the state legislatures of today, they become the congressmen and women of tomorrow. And then, right, they become the senators, US senators, and then they become the presidents. Two of them, they become the president, vice presidents. And so we know we are building our bench for what's to come. And so then my last point here is that, I just like to say, as Democrats, we know that when we unify, we win. That's always been the case. When we unify, we win. But right, when we're divided, we lose. United, we stand, divided, we fall. And a good example of this was in 2016. In 2016, we had a very divisive presidential primary. Absolutely, understandably so. But we did not unite. And so then what happened? Neither of our candidates won. And we elected the orange man. And to be quite frank, our country has not been the same since. And so here's our time again to unite and answer the call, because the stakes are very high. So again, I'd just like to conclude with thanking everyone. Thank you, 31st Street, for your support. It definitely matters. We are on the ground, putting in the work on a daily basis, for gun safety, education, reproductive health, and much more, especially here in Michigan and with our slate. And we'll continue to do so. And, looking forward to answering questions and continuing to get after it on the campaign trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate both of you spending some time with us. Before we're going to open it to questions, I just want to turn it over to Mary Pence, who is our fundraising leader, one of our leaders, and Jim's sister to boot. Mary.
Good evening. My name is Mary Pence. And so building on this wonderful energy that Sarah and Travis have brought to us, I want to try to capture for you the energy of this point in the national campaign. And then I want to ask you to do something coming from your own energy. So here's what I'm observing at the national level. First of all, a really deep bench of campaigners for the Harris-Walz ticket. In addition to picking the down-home yet charismatic Tim Walz, Kamala is enlisting her wonderful husband, cabinet secretaries, members of Congress to campaign alongside her. The Democratic ticket is focusing heavily on young voters. Something I just saw today is that the campaign is committing $200 million to digital ads, which will reach young voters in these coming 2 months. Not old fogies like most of us, but this really, really important population. You all know that the Democratic Party has been opening and staffing campaign offices in the swing states for months. By contrast, the RNC has closed many of its local campaign offices and is outsourcing their ground game to some really questionable organizations. And the last thing I want to lift up is voter registration. There has been an incredible surge in voter registration relative to the same time period in 2020, driven by women, by voters of color, and by young voters. And yet it is essential that every one of us on this call seize the moment, seize this opportunity to do what we can. When the tide is with you, that is the time to do even more. My husband and I are contributing $6,000 to these 14 candidates. Whether we raise 20,000 or even 25,000 for each of these candidates, we will have provided a substantial cash infusion to their campaigns. And look, we realize that not everybody can contribute at that level. Perhaps some of you can contribute above that level. But coming from the place of your own energy and enthusiasm and wanting to be a part of an amazing chapter in American political history, please stretch and make whatever contribution is a stretch for you. If you have already contributed, would you please consider contributing again? This is important. We're just a little more than 2 months away from the election, and early voting starts soon. Would you please help these candidates have the funds they need to run effective campaigns? So please join my husband Dan and me in making the most significant contribution you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that message. Always so astute and on point. I am Aaron Hamburger, and I do membership over here at 31st Street Swing Left. And I also handle Q&A in programs such as these. So I've been collecting questions in the chat, and I'm going to now lob them over to our wonderful guest speakers. Go Blue! I'll be watching Saturday night. And Wisconsin, we love you too. Actually a question for both of you. Thank you for stepping up to the plate. And what will you do with the additional funds that you will be poised to receive through our efforts tonight? So maybe Sarah first and then Travis.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, thank you. I mean, I get really emotional when I see this kind of outpouring from people that are just strangers to little old me and Travis. And so thank you for that and for contributing in the ways that you are and doing what you can. Thank you so much. What will we do with the money? Well, signs. We are making, so we have yard signs, but we're doing some 4x4s and 4x8 signs. Those are not cheap, but we're really trying to, because we're in rural areas, we can't get everywhere. So we're trying to get to some major thoroughfares where we can really put these signs. We are doing mailers. We are doing ad buys on TV. So all of that is costing a lot of money. One of the things we know, because the person that I'm running against is an incumbent Republican. She's it's a female. She's so anti reproductive freedoms that she has helped to write legislation orienting around fetal personhood. Which means we would be affected by birth control issues and limitations, IVF issues, limitations, etc. And so she's a really avid supporter of those things, and so pro-life issues. And but she's beloved because a lot of people don't know that, and she's been in the legislature a long time, and she's very grandmotherly and comes across quite sweetly. And she has her door cards have a recipe for like banana bread or something. So it's sort of like trying to figure out how to best present our issues and our differences. So mailers, and what I was saying is her campaign has committed, or the Democratic Party has committed $2 million to help her keep her seat. So we know for sure that we are going to be up against $2 million just for this one Senate seat. So that tells you, A, how broken the system is and how much money is being poured into races and how desperately we need campaign finance reform, but it also tells you that we can use all the generous donations that you are offering to make sure that we have a viable fight here against somebody that has much more name recognition than somebody new to the scene.
Great. And Travis, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. The bottom line here is that we need to tell our story. Right. And here in Michigan, we believe in pragmatism. We believe in making sure that we produce ideas and legislation that matters to people. We're result oriented. And so we need to push through the rhetoric. We know that that's how Republicans attack us. I mean, I hate to make it like that, but we know that that's what happens. There's a lot of lies. There's a lot of, right, science isn't real. There's a lot of airwaves that go that aren't simply true. And so we need to be sure to be able to tell our story and plan. Hey, we want to, we're advocating for gun safety. Well, what do you mean, right? Well, we want to put restrictions on the ability to buy 100-round magazines. We don't know why civilians need that, right? We want to make sure that we put restrictions on bump stocks that make firearms automatic, right? That's not as juicy and appealing as a lie. Hey, if you take the vaccine, you will disappear, right? And so then, therefore, in order to tell the truth, we require investment in order to tell that truth and tell the plan to Michiganders and the Michigan people. And that's exactly what we'll use those funds for. I think Sarah touched on it quite well. Mailers, making sure that we contrast the difference. These are our choices. Hey, dictator on day one, or reproductive freedoms, reproductive rights, right? And we need to make sure that we tell our story. That's exactly what funds will do. Mailers, also digital ads, right? Making sure that we have a university in our district, Oakland University, that did really well in the NCAAs. But, right, and we have to communicate to those students, let them know that, right, their education and what education could be in the future, right, that's on the line. And so that's exactly what we'll use the dollars for, getting those text messages out, sending out our website links, making sure that, takes one click, and we're convincing people, hey, these are the stakes, these are the choices, and this is why it matters. So that's our plan to use your dollars. And thank you for the question.
Wonderful. Okay, I think we have time for brief. This is like the lightning round in the debates. Top issues for voters in your district. I know that Gaza was an issue that somebody asked about in the chat, but if you just be ever so brief, top issues for your districts. Maybe Travis and then Sarah.
Yeah, so I kind of got a two-parter here, Aaron, but I'll be really brief. Definitely, thank you for the light throw. Well, our top issues in the district, right, I said it, gun safety, education, and reproductive health. And of course, environmental stewardship. We have the Great Lakes here in Michigan, also Wisconsin does too. And so those are top of mind for us, and we fight for those and advocate for those, among other issues. In terms of Gaza, it's a very sensitive issue. It has impacted our elections. I think I made a comment earlier about how our primaries could be so divisive, or how Democrats, we can be divided, and then that impacts our ability to win. Gaza is one of those issues. Bottom line, I think in the whole conversation, we need to talk more about peace in general. History has shown us, and as a diplomat and a veteran, I've seen firsthand, hate never wins the day. Peace always prevails. And so I hope that we continue to work in that direction, and unite as a Democratic Party, because the country depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will just list the three that come to mind that I hear the most about: housing, making it affordable, because most people can't either find housing or they can't afford it. because there's a dearth of that. Public school funding, making sure that our schools are more adequately funded. And many people are concerned about the private voucher system taking public dollars. And then just prices of things, cost of things is an issue that people bring up often. One more thing I'll say is on both sides of the fence, people are really oriented to my story of being a mental health provider, which has been surprising, really concerned about mental health in our world.
Well, I just want to say a big thank you to both of our guest speakers who are out there in the trenches fighting for democracy, doing all the things that we need to do to make positive change in this world. And we are with you 100%. We are rooting for you. And, you know, we love that as you're working for yourselves, you're also benefiting Democrats all the way up the ticket so we can elect our first female president of the United States. It's about time. Let's do this. All right, I'm going to hand the mic over to Lisa.
So thank you so much. We've raised a lot of money tonight, and we're going to just keep on working at it till we hit our 280. A number of us will stay on for just other comments and other questions, but this is the end of our formal program. We really appreciate your attending and your donating. So many people contributed tonight. It's wonderful. We're very grateful. We will see you again at our next event. And if you are not a member, we would love to have you join us. And we will put our website in the chat once again. But thank you so much and good night.
So you're welcome to stay on for the after chat, though. Hopefully the candidates might stay a little bit longer also, more informal. Thanks.
Would you like us to stay? I could stay for a bit.
Yes, yeah,
great.
that'd be good. There's probably some more questions that Aaron's got up his sleeve.
Jim knows me too well. Okay, I'm just looking through the questions that we have in the chat. Actually, Sarah, maybe you can just chat a little bit about the competitive nature of just the other candidates in Wisconsin and what the state of the race is there, and then maybe Travis can talk about Michigan.
Sure. So we have new maps, like I mentioned before. This is the first time in, I don't know, decades where 97 of the 99 assembly districts have a Democrat running. So that's big for our state because we've been gerrymandered for at least 12 years. And so a lot of those went unchallenged. The Senate has 16 races this year. I think it's 17 next year, or maybe I've flipped those around. There are 4 that are flippable this year of those. And right now the Democrats are in a super minority in in Wisconsin for the Senate. But we're hoping to flip 4 this year. And those have been targeted with special mention and a bit of extra. Those 4 that are flippable. My district is about a 50-50 district. It's about as purple as it can get. And like I said, I'm running against an incumbent, which makes it a little tricky. It's a big district, but she also only has represented previously 30% of the new district that we're in. So there's a 60% or 70, pardon me, that doesn't really know her. And so I'm still able to kind of share my story, get my name out there in a way that hopefully will be really helpful. Once we hopefully again flip 3 or 4 seats this year, then in 2025, I think there's about 3 others that are flippable. If those are flipped, we will have the majority in the state of Wisconsin in the Senate. We're looking at also flipping the legislature of the assembly. And we have a governor, Governor Evers, who's a Democrat. So we have a really good chance of all of a sudden having this trifecta of Democratic leadership that might be able to do some really meaningful things, because we've really suffered since Scott Walker and many of the things that came about, some 15 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Travis, how about Michigan?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a Democratic majority, and this is the first time that we had a Democratic trifecta in over 40 years. And so basically, the Democrats, our record is on the line. Hey, here are the things that we've done. right? We put gun safety. We lifted an abortion ban, even in cases, right? A 1931 abortion ban, even in cases of rape and incest, right? And so all of those legislative decisions are on the line. You know, they're really there for people to decide and make sure that our state continues to go in the right direction. And we've been kind of a leader for other states in the country. Actually, I have a next door neighbor. So Jim notably pointed out Nate Shannon, who is south of me. Our borders touch, but then also right next door to me, I would say west, is Shadia Martini, and right. So these communities are very much so connected and interlinked, and they talk to each other. We're all in one. We're all in one. Those 3 seats. We're all in one county. That's Oakland County, and that's the 2nd largest county in the state of Michigan, and very influential in where Michigan goes. And so it's just very important. Those are all very competitive seats. 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points. I mean, they move on the daily, and it really matters the issues that you talk about. And in Michigan, we're a very pragmatic bunch. We're very issue focused, economic focused, job creation focused. These things matter here in our state. And so, and it's a very complex state. You know, you go to one area, it's quite rural, but then literally the community next door is quite metropolitan. And so, and that's not even to mention, as someone alluded to, right, we have a very Arab American community in Dearborn. And so there's, you know, the margins are so thin here. They are.
Hmm. Yes, I grew up in Oakland County, so I know whereof you speak. So it's great to have you here. Okay, Sandy, I believe you have a question. Go ahead and unmute.
I do have a question. Travis, you just mentioned the Arab community. Any thought post-convention about how that if that community will stay home, will wait to the end and then go out and vote for Kamala Harris and vote for other Democrats? Where do those of you who are further down ballot figure in their thinking about voting, not voting, how they'll vote, etc.?
Yeah, no, thank you, Sandra, for the great question. And this is why contribution in dollars matters so much, because we have to tell our story. We have to speak to all communities, but also the Arab community, about why what Democrats do, why what we do matter, and what we're going to do for that community and for the state. And so that's where those dollars really come in, to communicate to them and tell them, hey, this is our plan. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. There was a lot of energy around the DNC, no doubt about it. And there were, you know, I think the Israel, Palestine and Gaza issue was brought up during the DNC. There was a few references to it, but we got to make sure that you know, that they're seeing investment in the community, right? That they see that their voices matter. And I think there's still work to do there. We still have to talk to that community. We still have to outreach to that community and really show the contrast between the plans, right? The Republicans and the Democrats, and explain to them that unifying and coming together will be a step towards productivity and hopefully a step towards overall peace in general. And so, yeah, it's a very complex issue. I think there's, you know, in terms of what I'm hearing on the ground, people are still very passionate about it. I would, you know, I would take their concerns seriously. If they say they're not going to vote, or they're going to vote uncommitted, or they're going to vote for a third party candidate, they're not. My mom used to say, when someone tells you who they are, what they're going to do, believe them. And so I would believe them in that case.
Great, thank you for that answer. We wanted to give you all the easy questions, Travis. So
thank you, Aaron. Well, you know, nothing comes easily when you say Oakland County. We all know this. It's a very it's a very interesting, and it's my community and proud of it. But it's one for the, it's a special one.
Okay, any other folks who have questions for either of our speakers?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. We really
Both
appreciate you.
for being here, and thank you to everyone who contributed tonight. We've raised $235,000, so that's terrific.